You must expect a miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Welcome to Live Today. I'm Randy Robinson, and you heard the music, but you didn't see the graphics. I messed that up. But hey, it's okay. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about something that is it's just kind of blown up, especially in the last 2 years, in my mind anyway, in importance, and that is education. What are we doing with our children? Are we doing the right thing by our children? I question that. And there's a new documentary out that looks into that. And I've got the principal, those involved in making this documentary with me today. But before I dive into the interview, I'm going to set it up by showing you the trailer. This is Schoolhouse Rocked.
You're not inadequate. You are perfectly capable. I mean, what is it about a parent that when their child turns 5, all of a sudden the parent's no longer a viable option? Like, oh, you're done. Now it's the school's turn.
I think the quality of education has steadily deteriorated in America. There is an agenda to steal our children.
You feel inadequate because you've been taught by our school system that you're inadequate.
We had no frame of reference for homeschooling other than it just seemed like torture. Like, why would a sane woman choose to be locked up with her kids for 18 years in a row when a school bus would come and take them away and give you like a 9-hour break every day?
No one knows your child better than you do, and no one loves your child more than you do.
And homeschooling changes the game on everything. Homeschooling allows us to say to the child, what sort of life do you want? What sort of God-given dreams, talents, and abilities is he speaking into you?
When we think about classroom education and we ask what makes for good education, almost every professional educator will say low student-teacher ratio, teachers who care, good methods, good curriculum. Well, in homeschooling, you get the best of all of those things.
What we discovered is that it's very efficient to homeschool.
You have the person who knows the student the best. You have the ability to customize the curriculum around the student. You have a great student-teacher ratio.
And I realized I am accomplishing with Sierra in 25 minutes to an hour every day what is taking the school system 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to accomplish with my older daughter. I loved watching the light bulb come on and watching her want to sit down and read with me. And I loved spending time with her.
There are just so many benefits, including being able to have a relationship with your own children.
Continue doing what you're doing. Don't give up, because I do believe that homeschool moms are America's greatest heroes.
That is Schoolhouse Rocked. You see the URL there, schoolhouserock.com. And that is available now if you want to go watch it. You can organize an event and do a showing in your church or school, perhaps. But that's a really good place for you to really think about what we're doing with our kids. I have with me Garritt and Yvette Hampton. Garritt is the director of the film. Yvette is the producer and host of the film. So we're going to talk about what is going on in our public schools. What can we do about it? Garritt and Yvette, great to have you on Live Today Live.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So I do want to talk about some of the timing sort of this film. As we briefly discussed before we started, you actually started this before COVID hit, and yet COVID really has accelerated, I think, this conversation. Talk about some of the process as you were putting this thing together.
Yeah, well, ironically, when we set out, we started in 2016, and I had done many movies before I worked in the movie industry. And so somebody asked us when we started how long we thought it would take to get it done. And I said, I can't imagine this movie taking more than a year. Well, 3 years into it, we were still filming. And all along we were thinking, Lord, what are you doing with the timing of this movie? We could not understand why it was taking so long. And he never stopped production. He allowed us to keep going, but it just didn't move as quickly as we thought it should. We finished filming in 2019 and started editing. And I had about finished the rough edit on the film, and all of a sudden COVID hit. And everything changed. 54 million kids came home from school for these lockdowns. And we looked and we thought, oh, here it is, Lord. You knew what timing needed, to get this thing out. And so we actually had to change the edit a little bit and accommodate the changes that had happened for COVID. But we just brought the movie out in November, and the response has been great. And the beauty is that because of all these great changes from COVID, parents' eyes are so much more open now, and families are so receptive to this message that may never have been before. So God knew what he was doing with the timing.
Yeah, you kind of get the sense, I have 4 kids in public school all the way through. They're adults now. And you see stuff if you pay attention. But my gosh, what kind of came out with the forced distance learning, everybody on Zoom like we are now, but for their classroom, meaning the parents were hearing what was going on. And some of the reports that came out, it was, I guess part of me kind of suspected or thought, but it just seemed really prevalent that there is a lot of garbage going on in our schools, public schools, and also a lot of wasted time,
Right.
What did you find while you were going through talking to people, doing your research for this film?
Yeah, I think the wasted time was actually a really interesting revelation. Is we had homeschooled before we started the movie, so we understood that the day was more efficient. I don't think we really understood to what level, though. And we talked to several parents who said, there's just no reason that your child should be doing homeschool for more than a couple hours a day, even through high school. And the big reason for that is you don't deal with the classroom management. You don't deal with discipline of 30 students. You don't deal with passing between classes. There's just so much waste involved in a normal school day that gets avoided altogether during homeschooling. So it just makes everything go a little easier. The other thing that allows for, though, is that students who are really motivated can actually get done quicker and end up doing some college or much college before they ever graduate from high school. There's tons of dual enrolled students who are graduating high school already with an associate's degree.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, students who might be struggling, their parents can slow down to go at their pace, which is one of the greatest benefits of homeschooling.
Yeah, we get to teach from mastery.
And well, what about the burden on the parents? My wife was a school teacher, briefly. Subbed a lot when we first got married, and then we started having kids, and I was like, you're a teacher, you're going to homeschool? She's like, no way. I mean, is this something that anyone can do?
Oh, yes, I think so. So you talk about the burden, and I can honestly say children, as you know, children are a blessing. They are not a burden to us. But what I have found in talking to homeschool parents, or parents who maybe think that they can't homeschool, is they'll say, I can't imagine spending all day with my kids. They would drive me absolutely nuts. And the reason that we have found for that is because kids who are in school, typically, the parents are not the ones raising them. Mm-hmm. They're being raised by a school system for over 11,000 hours of their childhood. And so when they're being raised by a school system 5 days a week for 7 hours plus a day, and maybe even more if they're involved in sports and extracurricular activities, the parents only have a very minimal amount of time with their kids. And so that small amount of time that they have with them, their parents are not the greatest influence in their life. Those who spend the most time with your kids have the greatest influence in their lives. And so what we're finding is that when parents are bringing their kids home, at first it might be really hard, but as they have them home and parents start instilling their own values and morals and discipline and training, all of a sudden they like their kids again. Or maybe even for the first time ever, they're starting to enjoy their kids. And as far as any parent being able to home educate their kids, God has given us our kids, and He has given us everything we need in order to do what He's called us to do. You know, Matthew 6:33 says, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. We need not worry about whether or not we're going to be effective in teaching math. We need to worry about how is it that we're raising our kids and what are we teaching them day to day.
And if I could add something to that, we do very much care, though, that they learn math, right? But we also understand two things. First of all, there's the bad side, right? And that's that, unfortunately, so many parents who have gone through the public school system feel completely inadequate to transmit the information they received in the system. Yeah. This is a great failure of the system, is that you're left thinking, how could I ever teach this stuff, right? But the flip side of it is this. The truth is you only have to stay one day ahead of your kids. And even if you're teaching your children and you're the primary educator and the primary one training their heart, you don't have to be the only one teaching them every subject. So neither Yvette or I are very good at math. We have a great math tutor for our daughter. But even for families who can't afford tutors and extra classes, there are so many free and low-cost resources that it's very easy to teach your kid through high school with these, fantastic resources and have them get a great education. What we find is that children graduating from homeschool and going into college are actually statistically better prepared for college than their peers. And demographics, the demographics of the parents, have nothing to do with that outcome. It's actually very uniform across every demographic and education level.
Interesting. All right. I do want to ask about some of the bad that you found out there in the schools, because I know you got to be aware of it. I'm aware of some of it, and I'm not even that close to it. But before I get into that, the curriculum these days, I know obviously the internet has also given rise to, I can learn anything, There's an app for, I've been working on a language now for a while, and I took language in school. But with the app, I can go at my own pace. I can get a little deeper. Of course, the resources, I can immerse myself in a language. So I feel like the resources have come so far that it's way easier now than it's ever been. Am I right about that?
This is very true.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. In fact, if you think about your own education, right? Education is an ongoing process. And ironically, even just YouTube is able to meet just about every need. It's absolutely free and it's there for everyone.
I know.
I had to change a headlight on a Honda Accord a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know how to do it. What did I do? I opened up YouTube, I watched a video, and the headlight got fixed, right? Well, the same is very true for teaching children. Literally every subject is right at our fingertips. We don't have an information problem. What we do have, though, is a confidence problem. Parents just don't feel equipped. And so we're very encouraged to be able to say, look, you can do this. There are great resources. It's going to get done, and the kids are going to turn out okay at the end.
Well, okay, and that's another question. Are the kids okay at the end? Because you always hear, I know the stigma growing up, and my sister homeschooled for a while, so it's nothing personal. But the stigma is that homeschool kids are weird or socially awkward. How do you overcome that because of the isolation?
Yeah, well, I never knew any weird kids in public school when I went, right? Usually kids turn out just about as weird as their families. Parents are weird, and there's weird people in every sphere of life. So it's true there are some weird, unsocialized homeschool kids, right? But the vast majority of them are totally well-rounded, able to function in society. Let's look at one aspect of preparedness, and that's college readiness, right? Because that seems to be still this lofty goal for everybody. Will my kids get into college? Will they do well? Well, I can tell you that colleges are actively recruiting homeschool students, and they actually find that when they get to class, they're better prepared than their peers, especially in the area of writing and language arts, where these kids are able to communicate ideas, complex ideas, clearly in ways that their public school peers just aren't. And this is borne out in several statistics. There's a great organization in Oklahoma that only does homeschool research. And for years, like 30 years, they've done homeschool research. And literally every study they do over and over and over and over, they find that these kids do better on SATs and ACTs. They do better in the real world once they hit the job market. But on the flip side, that social aspect, right? Because this is the big argument. Kids won't be socialized. Well, the first thing is when you dump a kid into a room of 30 other kids their age, and their primary influences are just kids their age, they're getting a very narrow scope of social readiness, right? Whereas in homeschooling, not only do we have our kids usually in mixed opportunities at home with their siblings and their parents, but we have the freedom throughout the week to do all sorts of co-ops, library days, field trips, and things like this. And our kids go shopping with us during the week. I mean, our kids get mixed into society day after day after day, and church and Awana and sports and all these things. We find that homeschool kids really are very well-rounded socially and can hold their own in different age groups.
I think just that awareness has helped a lot of homeschool parents make that extra effort to do the outside things so that kids aren't too shocked. Especially, I had some nephews who were homeschooled, and they had a little difficulty when they went to university because now they're in a class of 100 people when it had been one-on-one. So that in itself was a bit of a jolt. I mean, they're fine, obviously, they're great now, but I think giving the parents the confidence with the curriculum and the encouragement with the socialization, I mean, that to me is a well-rounded solution. And you mentioned that homeschool kids are sought out by universities and do better on the standardized tests. No surprise, because of the failure in the public schools right now. I love my teachers, I know plenty of them, and there are some really fabulous ones out there, but it seems like there's systemic failure that's creeping in more and more. And we know that certain places, it seems like they've always failed, but it seems like it's getting so widespread. Are you seeing a lot of this? Did you see a lot of this in your filmmaking process?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, even outside of the film, if you looked at last November's election cycle, we saw whole elections that were swung because parents are so dissatisfied with what's going on in schools. And leaders are telling parents, look, you have no business interjecting yourself into this process. The failure, in quotes, is very clear. The issue I would take, though, is I don't actually believe it's failure. If you just look at the area of comprehensive sex ed, let's say, this is an area that across the board, parents are very, very averse to the subjects being taught. Children are openly being taught that the LGBT thing is great, that transgenderism is great, and kids are actually being enabled by their schools to pursue that outside of the oversight of their parents. Yeah. The vast majority of parents don't agree with this, but this isn't being pulled back in the schools. It's not seen as a failure. It's seen as a great success. And so schools invite Planned Parenthood and GLSEN and these organizations in to do it all the more. And I want to touch on one word real quick. When we hear comprehensive sex ed, we have to understand that comprehensive means it's in every aspect of their kids' education. It's literally rolled into PE and health class and history and language arts. It's not a class that you can opt out of. It's a whole system. We're also seeing the rise of critical race theory. This, if you look at it under a microscope, it looks like our children are being taught to be racists, right? Which is true. Yeah. But this is a bigger symptom of a problem that our kids are being taught that history, the true history of our nation, and the true history of the world is a lie. And they can't believe what's in the books, and they can't believe, the truth about history. And so we don't just end up with a generation of kids who have problems with racism. We have a generation of kids who hate America, who hate the Constitution, who don't know where they came from, and who are actually pro-Marxism and pro ideologies that are tearing down our nation and tearing down our children.
And ideologies that historically have been far more racist than, anyway. All right, so I want to show people the website. This is schoolhouserocked.com, and you can see it's got trailer images going on right there, movie images going on right there, but you can find out more about it, including, how you can do a screening, how you can watch it yourself, just a lot of great ways to use this as a tool to educate yourself, educate others, start a conversation, maybe help, kick off a movement in your community. We talk about the education aspect of it because we're talking about education. And there's one thing, when I sent my kids to public school, I didn't expect them to be the Bible teachers of my kids. We made sure that that was at home and at church. The further you get into this, and it seems like over the last 20 years it's really escalated, the schools have become not just secular in the sense of outside the church. It's like they're working against us. It's like, let's go to church on Sunday and learn these things, and then let's go to public school Monday through Friday and learn why what you learned on Sunday is wrong or evil or, outdated. Yeah. It's like schools in so many cases are working against us as Christians. Yeah. Are we failing our kids spiritually?
Well, I'll get to that failure spiritually, but I want to say that schools are really the most successful evangelistic organizations in the world. We understand that no education is divorced from doctrine, and the schools as a system they are built around a doctrine of humanism, of secularism, and now even of Marxism and racist ideas. These are religious worldviews that are anti-Christian. And so you ask, are we failing our kids? And I have to say that on some level, when you see the church that has over 80% of their kids in an anti-Christian organization, religious organization, day after day, I do think there's a failure there. It's hard to beat up on the church, but I want to say pastors should be screaming from the pulpits, please, parents, take back the hearts of your children. We have a biblical mandate, especially dads, to disciple our children, but parents have a biblical mandate to train up the hearts of their children in the ways of the Lord. And when we think that on Sundays and at night, maybe at dinner after the kids are done with homework, we can make up for the 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, year after year after year that they get indoctrination in the public schools. I really think we're missing the mark. So I do think there's a bit of failure there, and I don't mean to cast guilt on parents, but I do want to call parents to account and say, please, parents, wake up. It's time to bring back the hearts of your children.
I believe in tell me your thoughts on this, but I've thought now for especially the last couple of years, churches really, really should be rushing to fill the gap. I see with the distance learning and stuff and the garbage that's come out, it seems to me to be a real opportunity for churches to say, hey, look, we're going to do something. And then you don't have to open a full-fledged school, even if a church did a homeschooling support group. Or, it seems like this is a real opportunity right now.
Yeah. There, you would be surprised. There are so many co-ops that are popping up all over the nation. And the biggest hurdle to get over is not forming the co-op, not getting the families who want to come. It's finding a facility who will host that co-op. And, we live in Oklahoma. There is a church on every corner of this town. Yet it is still difficult in a town like this. And the reason that we have found is because pastors don't want to preach that. They don't want to support that because they have people in their church who are public school administrators, public school teachers, and they don't want to bring offense to those people. So they say, we're just going to keep our hands off of this homeschool idea.
Really?
And it is really difficult for families and homeschool people to find places to gather and support one another. And you're absolutely right. The churches should be opening their doors because in reality, that's the house of God. That's not a building that belongs to the pastor or to his staff anyway. And so, it would be a great benefit to families to open up their doors.
It's a building that sure as heck doesn't belong to the teachers union. No offense.
Right.
But this seems like the time, if there has ever been a time, for the church to rise up and say, you know what, we're going to raise our children in the way they should go as a body. Not just tell you to as a parent, but we're going to come alongside you as a body and do that. I'm curious, where in Oklahoma, what city are you in Oklahoma? Not to cast.
We're in Broken Arrow.
Oh, you're Broken Arrow.
Right outside of Tulsa.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I know. I lived in Broken Arrow for 6 years.
Okay.
Roberts University grad. So love Tulsa. Love Tulsa.
The big praying hands.
Yeah, which No, I'm not going to say it on the air. I'll tell you later. All right, back to Schoolhouse Rocked. This is the website, schoolhouserock.com. And I didn't do all my research here. Are there some links to some resources for people there at your website?
Yeah, the last thing we wanted to do was get people excited about homeschooling and then leave them flat after they're excited.
Right.
So we've actually spent the last 3.5 years producing really, really great free resources for the homeschool community. We have a book out. It's called the Homeschool Survival Kit. It's free. You can get it on the website, and it's actually the version that's up there now is a 70-page resource that's free for families that walks you through homeschooling.
Nice.
We also produce a podcast 3 times a week, the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast, and we bring on experts in education and speakers and authors to talk about the issues that parents struggle with. And it's a great way to get built up. If you don't know what you're doing, this is a great place to start. So you can find all of that at schoolhouserocked.com.
Perfect. I love it. Before I let you go, Yvette, either one of you, give people an idea of who you're talking to in the film.
That's a great question. When we looked at the audience that we were trying to reach when we started the film, it was our 2 main audiences were those who are homeschooling, because we really wanted to bring encouragement and validate them in their decision to homeschool. Mm-hmm. And then it was for those parents who were sitting on the fence and they're like, well, we're thinking about it, but we're not really sure if we can do this. And we wanted to open their eyes. It is not an anti-public school documentary. It is a pro-homeschool documentary. So we debunk all of the myths and misconceptions that people have about homeschooling. So we wanted to answer all of the questions that people have about home education. So those were our 2 main audiences. But then also you bring in, maybe grandparents or your neighbor who doesn't understand homeschooling, and answer the questions for them, and provide a tool for people to be able to say, here, watch this movie, and you'll understand why we've made this decision. Or maybe for a mom who wants to homeschool and her husband is opposed to it, she can say, honey, can you please watch this film with me so that you can better understand? But one of the greatest audiences that we did not anticipate, and that has come in after the movie, was released, was kids and typically teenagers. We've heard from several families who have watched the film with their kids, and afterwards, and these are homeschooled kids already. Afterwards, these kids have said to their parents, thank you for homeschooling us. We understand now why you've made the decision to home educate us. And we never even considered that the kids would be one of our primary audiences, but it's been absolutely incredible to see the impact that it's had on the kids themselves to watch this film and have their eyes opened as well.
Very cool. You had anybody see it that wasn't necessarily part of your target audience that has gone, oh, I didn't realize, because I have a little bit of that. I mean, it's in retrospect, not much I can do about it now, but part of me does go, I don't know that I would do it that way again. Are you swaying some people maybe who hadn't really thought about it?
The best stories we're hearing are from moms who had a heart for homeschooling, or they were homeschooling, but dad was really reluctant, was saying, we'll do this a little while, but I don't know if it's going to work. And we've heard over and over that dads will watch and go, oh, I get it now, and this is what we're doing forever.
Yeah.
I can tell you that we are blessed to get to hear the feedback and see how God's using the film. And I can honestly say we haven't heard anything negative, but we see over and over how God's hand is at work using this film to change hearts truly for eternity.
I love it. How are the visual effects in this film, Garritt?
Amazing, actually.
Spaceships everywhere.
Yeah, that was my background in Hollywood, was doing visual effects. And this film is a very real and very simple film. We talk to real people and it looks beautiful.
It actually starts out with a short clip of a home video from our youngest daughter when she was just a little, 3 years old.
Garritt, I've read your IMDb page. I was expecting, some things exploding or that's great. No,
we only want to explode the myth that parents can't teach their kids.
Well done. What a transition. That was fabulous. All right, Garritt, anything I missed? I love the conversation. I love what you're doing. Please keep doing it, and let's just wake people up. Is there anything else you want to say before I let you go today?
You know what I really do want to say, Randy, thank you for having us on. And I want to say that when you watch the movie, you will get to see evidence of God's hand at work. What we did was not about us, and it wasn't through our power. And we still sit in awe as we watch it and think, man, God, you did a great work. He took so little and made something so great out of it.
I love it. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your expertise. Thank you guys for watching. Somebody needs to hear this. Share this right now. You're going to encourage somebody to really do their kids a favor and themselves a favor, I think. But if you haven't followed or subscribed, do that now. Hit like, again, share, all that good stuff. Come back. We've got more for you right here on Life Today all week. We'll see you again next time.